Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapturous racing action in the SimRacing International UKSimRacing GT3 Championship Season 16 as brought to you on the premier SimRacing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. That's right, we're into the second half of the 16th instalment of this championship, and as we make our way into the second half of the season, well, where better to continue the flow of the story than to make our way to the Sunshine State of the United States of America, known as Florida, and with it for the historical and absolutely epic circuit that is Sebring International Raceway. 3.74 miles in length and the best part of 17 corners, it is a circuit that originated on the site of a former Army Air Force base known as Hendricks Airfield, and it has remained situated there even though the airfield has gradually moved on, but the airbase is still there in the fact it's a commercial runway just alongside the circuit now, and what that means is that this circuit still harks its history all the way back to its origins, with one of the most rough and rugged combinations of tarmac and indeed concrete slabs for a road surface that you'll see at any circuit in the world. With the 12 hours of Sebring normally taking place ahead of the 24 Hour of Le Mans each and every year, many teams and drivers liken this to being the 24 Hour of Le Mans, but even tougher on the machine, with the bumps of the concrete slabs being offset by the smoothness of the tarmac, and therefore driver and machine need to be absolutely ready to go through those bumps lap after lap. Get it right and they may just survive and make it all the way through to victory. Get it wrong, however, and the suspension may ground out, it may even collapse, and driver and machine may be worn out before they can even see that checker flag. But who today will have the stamina to outlast the test of Sebring? Well, that's what we're here to find out in this post-round broadcast from circuit side as you tune in live here on the YouTube channel, only on, of course, SimRacing International's YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com and search for SRI or SimRacing International, and you can be tuning in there and join the likes of many of your colleagues. And well, nobody said hello so far. Feel free to get into first place and say hi in the YouTube chat if you dare, because we don't bite here in the chat. All we do is make sure we see biting on the breaks, and we welcome every one of you as you tune in today. And if you had a rough start to the week, perhaps today's hump day with it being a Wednesday, and therefore you got a frown, well, let's turn it upside down and turn it into a smile here with some absolutely brilliant racing action. In the quarantine booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain as Bit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I shall be bringing you all your racing action as it unfolds. But as this is a post-round broadcast, let's be fully transparent with you. The racing you are going to see is not live. It occurred as of Sunday, the 2nd of November 2025, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live this fine Wednesday evening on the 5th of November, and therefore we do not know what happens in the qualifying session that's currently ongoing, nor the upcoming race. And speaking of the upcoming race, while scheduled for tonight, times in Greenwich Mean Time as GMT, or still called any time UTC, as we can see in just over 5 minutes time, we're making the way to the grid for our 6th round of racing for the season, and we'll see how the story continues across our 4 classes of Elite, Pro, Premier and Evo, and also the Teams Championship. But to get to that point, let's regale you the tale of the first half of the season and inform you as to where everybody stands. And therefore, as we can see, 5 rounds have passed as we began on the 28th of September at the Red Bull Ring. Then we made our way to Mexico for the debut round for the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in the UKSimRacing GT3 League, and we got to see it all play out there in absolutely brilliant style. Then round number 3, we made our way to Spain for a classic at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia. Indianapolis Motor Speedway kept us intrigued in round number 4, and then the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg was where we saw the racing play last time out. And what a round of race it was in Germany, and indeed we got to see some very interesting stories. In the elite class, a first win of the season for Richard Simnor has seen him move his championship lead forward ahead of Joe Nathan. More on that very shortly in terms of where the points stand. As for the Premier class, well, we'll talk about that shortly because the Pro class needs to come first if we go down through descending order of classes. And in the Pro class, despite absolutely huge pressure from 5 of his rivals over the whole race distance, Mikey Storey held over for his 3rd win of the season, despite everybody keeping honest, including the likes of Christer Halsoy and also out there none other than Christian Furs. But we also got to see some absolutely brilliant driving from other drivers in the field as well, including none other there in the Pro class than what was Christian Maltrek, and indeed for Mikey Storey it really was hold on all the way to the end. As for the Premier class, well, there we got to see Alan Levitt deliver an absolutely brilliant race win and make it his 2nd win of the season, and therefore everybody wondering where exactly that came from. As meanwhile in the Evo class, where it definitely was a story with Thomas Weston picking up back-to-back wins, he was absolutely unstoppable, nobody could get near him, and could he be on course for a 3rd one today? Because after today we'll be seeing our drivers make the way from North America to South America, and it will be the Autodromo Jose Carlos Carlos Pacio Interlagos that will play host for round 7. So coming on to the standings, well, where do they stand then after the 5 rounds? We begin with the Elite Drivers' Championship. Richard Simnor, with that first win of the season, he has now moved to 10 points clear of Rage Against the Game Esports' Joe Nathan, but the DCW Racing driver will know it's Ford versus Ferrari and Simnor versus Nathan every step of the way from this point onwards. Casper Rutner for Old Dudes in Cars, he sits in 3rd and is starting to pull away from the rest of the field with his first podium of the season, and that's 2nd place last time out. Ryan Davies, he's in 4th for Empire Motorsport, and indeed right now, lucky perhaps to be in that 4th place, given a number of his rivals have had difficult rounds so far, and Davies did of course miss the last round and also round number 3, but we can see the fight for 4th place is as close as the battle between the 2 leaders. Speaking of which, by the way, with regards to Joe Nathan, if you're wondering why he finished 4th in round number 5, well of course it was a late disaster in the race, with a spin in the final quarter giving him the enough instant points to put him into black flag territory, and therefore he was demoted from a 2nd place finish all the way down to 4th. The one of whom gained the place, Yavi Sierra there, who moved up to 3rd, the privateer, and taking his best result of the season, moves into 5th on 206 points, 12 ahead of Andy Jones, who we hope to see back on the grid soon, and we're missing him after only 3 rounds of racing, with the DCW Racing driver there from Wales representing the team proud. It was Helder Gonzalez who sits in 7th, and for Tractics Racing, ahead of Philip Schwerker, and then we have Ulrich Scholl and Ashley Koopman completing your top 10, with Koopman making his debut in round number 5, and a brilliant effort there for the privateer to make a 5th place. They'll be looking to compound that today. Sean Connor makes his debut as of this round, so we look forward to seeing the Connor Bros drive, one of 2 members of the Connor family on the grid, but he will be making his debut in the elite class, and Raz Harper will be hoping to get some points to the board today as he's back on the grid once more for DDK Racing Team. In Pro, well the story here is all about Mikey Storey. 3 wins, a 2nd place and an 8th. The Dexterous Motorsports driver is not the fastest out there it would seem, but he definitely is the most consistent, the best under pressure. He's ahead of Christer Halsoy by 60 points, and can anybody slow the BMW driver down? Well, the Tractics Racing driver was hoping to do so in Germany, but it all went quite wrong, and several drivers in the Pro class, and indeed several drivers in the Premier class, all picked up pit lane entry penalties for cutting across the pit entry lines, and the Norwegian driver there will be hoping that things are a lot more straightforward today. Christian Maltret, meanwhile, from America MA70 Esports, took his first podium of the season, and has moved into 3rd by the best part of 28 points ahead of Christian Furs. But then we see from the Panda Split Motorsports driver, it's Cy Anthony only 2 points behind, and the UK SimRacing price driver being one of those to pay the price for the penalty. Darren Sharple sits in 6th for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, held 234 points there, really making up the second half of the field, ahead of Jack Barker, who managed to miraculously make his way to 4th last time out in Germany, and the Made for Racing driver honestly admitted it was the mistakes of everybody else plus his consistency which really made the difference. Nathan Anstis, his main rival, is only 6 points behind in 8th for UKSimRacing Mansell, and it's Nathan's got for Empire Motorsport and Peter Cox for Slow and Steady Racing, who round off your top 10. From Peter Cox, who took that brilliant 3rd place finish, of course, his first podium of the season, we then do have Ivan Sander for Pegasus Sim Racing, and Stephen Donnelly completing your Pro top 12. From the JSD Motorsports driver then we come to the Premier class, and here we can see it's Dexterous Motorsports on top once again. They love being on top of their team, and right now with 2 wins, 2 seconds and a 3rd, will he get a 2nd, 3rd today? That would be consistent, wouldn't it? Well, Samuel Clark will be going for gold, but if he can take a podium at least he'll be very happy to do so. But the noose is tightening when it comes to the pressure around him, and Ricardo Luis Pereira being the first to put that pressure on when that 2nd place finished last time out for SRI Privateers of the Caribbean. Hendrik Zilka for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, he'll be looking to try and re-find his form as he moves a little bit closer to the top 2. However, the problem is right now he's not quite hitting the stride that he managed to find earlier on in the season, and he is right now becoming Mr. 4th place. Is that something he wants to be known for? I don't think so. I think he wants to be known as Mr. 1st place. But speaking of Mr. 1st place, with the equal number of maximum wins to Samuel Clark is Alan Lever, who has moved into 4th place for UKSimRacing Mansell, with then JST Motorsports Joe Sparrow sitting in 5th place meanwhile, and yet to break a higher position than 5th. And I think some frustration growing there for the Aston Martin driver, who has been giving it his all each and every round, but so far to no avail. But can he finally find a little bit more luck today? Well, we will have to wait and see. From him, it's then only what is 10 points to Austin Graff for Axis Sim Sports, with Richard Jones of Slow and Steady Racing in 7th ahead of John Watt, and the SRI with Saving Privateer Ryan ahead of Luke Sherlock there. And for Luke Sherlock, everyone's got to feel for him because he has been involved in more incidents than anybody else. That's not because he's a terrible driver. It's because he's had the worst luck of anybody, and in Germany it happened once again. Can Luke Sherlock just have a round where it doesn't end up in an open lap or an opening couple laps incident? Hopefully we'll see that happen today. Because if not, Daniel Pays may be able to squeeze ahead and move himself from 10th into 9th for Old Dudes in Cars. Rob Windsor sits 11th, and it's James Connolly for UKSimRacing, who is his teammate, who rounds off the Premier top 12. And as for the Evo top 12, Edward Berry leads the way with his lowest performance in some time, a 5th place last time out for the UKSimRacing Hill driver, and everybody is getting much closer. Jordan Jones, firstly, with a 2nd place for DWR with SimCoach Setups, moves into now only 14 points away. 4 behind him is his teammate Simon Hartley, and then Thomas Weston, the force that everybody's worried about here. Can anybody stop him? The priority of back-to-back wins, now on 322 points. He is coming through like a tidal wave, and he'll sweep everyone past him. Joel Loudon for SimRacing International, second privateer Ryan. He sits in 5th on 298 points, and it's so close right now that Richard White also finds himself in there, and it's a top 6 to die for in the Evo class, with the UKSimRacing Mansell driver there, round it out on 270 points. Well, goodness me, if you do the quick mathematics there, that is only 76 points between our top 6 drivers, the closest to our classes. Joseph Preston, he's been impressing, with a brilliant drive to 3rd place last time out for JST Motorsports, was hoping for 2nd, but couldn't quite beat Jordan Jones to the punch, but he's definitely taken motivation for that, as he's moved ahead of Max Gelgay. And then we do have, behind the split track esports driver, Daryl Jacovelli, and Paul Maffey for Phoenix Racing, who complete your top 10. Carl Tivoli and Alex Brown complete your top 12 for the Evo class, and then we come onto the Teams Championship standings. And as we can see, Dexterous Motorsports lead, and their advantage is growing massively. Head of UKSimRacing Mansell, who right now are having to play catch-up. Will they be able to do so? Well, the problem is, if they're going to, they've got to try to fend off the charges of everybody else, because they've got Darkwind Racing with SimCoach Setups, only 32 points behind, and it's a further 30 to Old Dudes in Cars Blue. DCW Racing, well, it is right now Richard Simnor there, who's been carrying the points forward, with Andy Jones and Mark Collicott not quite scoring the points compared to their teammate, but they'll be hoping for a much more level set of scores as the season goes on. And for the 624 points of DCW Racing, it's then 562 for Tractix Racing there, with UKSimRacing Hill a further 30 behind, and we can definitely see right now the top 5 of their own field, and the rest of the top 10 are the second field there, with it being very tight, with Old Dudes in Cars there only a further 4 behind. JST Motorsports sitting 9th from 496, and they're only 10 ahead of SimRacing International Privateers of the Caribbean, and we could see this top 10 change up come next round, depending on the results today. But as for our host circuit, it is of course the international or the fallout of Sebring International Raceway. Located near the town of Sebring in the Highlands County of the US state of Florida, 17 corners, 3.74 miles, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the track map that comes with it. All these corners, of course, being very flat, very little elevation change around here, and absolutely iconic bends, whether it be in Gender Being Corner at turn number 1, all the way through to Sunset Bend at turn number 17. Indeed, this circuit goes to the annals of history, not just at a domestic level, but internationally as well. And the theme around here is the fact there's a little something for everyone, along with a very rough and rugged road surface, with the tarmac running all the way from turn number 3, all the way round to turn number 14, and from turns 14 through to 1, that's where you'll see the old school concrete slabs shake the cars about. With hairpins, chicanes, and sweepers, there's something for everybody and plenty of overtaking opportunities, and that's where the fight is going to be fierce here at Sebring. But as for our rules before we go racing, this is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 60% for all races. Qualifying wise, a closed qualifying format shall be used, with drivers having 4 lineups available. That qualifying session has just been completed, and as for the race, it shall commence by a double file rolling start, as is a tradition of the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship, there being 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel. Changing tyres is entirely optional. Each driver has 1 fast repair available should they need to use it, and what we'll see is that drivers may also come into the pits if they pick up 20 or more instant points. That will be for a drive-through penalty, as all race journey meanwhile shall be conducted post-race. But without further ado, let's make our way to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, and as we do, well, it's time to see all drivers make the way onto the grid, and this is how they'll line up for round number 6 of the championship. So Richard Simnor takes pole position here today, and a brilliant pole position there by only what is 600ths versus his championship rival, of course, none other than Joe Nathan, who lines up alongside for Rage Against the Game Esports. But directly behind the DCW Racing Ford Mustang will be another Ford Mustang in the form of Ryan Davis for Empire Motorsport, who puts together another great qualifying performance there, and only missed a couple of rounds this season. It definitely has not slowed him down. Meanwhile, taking his pole position, I think it's his maiden pole position in the Pro Class this season, Christer Halsoy for Tractix Racing there. Well done to Norwegian driver, putting it full foot of the grid in the Aston Martin Vantage V8 Evo, and he will then have behind him none other than Brad Harper, who returns to the grid for DDK Racing Team and puts himself immediately in 5th place, and he'll be very happy with that, knowing he's not too far off the pace. Indeed, you can look at that there, you can see the fact he only missed out on 4th place to Halsoy by half a tenth, and the fact that we do have there a very tight top 3 as well is going to fill this race full of intrigue. Christian Furs, meanwhile, he sits in 6th place there for Panda Spec Motorsports, second of our pro drivers drivers there, and he was only a 10th behind, if that, from Harper, with Casper Brockner sitting in 7th place for Old Dudes in Cars, and while the Danishman will be hoping for a little bit more under race conditions, but he normally is a faster race driver than he is a qualifying driver. Ashley Coupland will be hoping for the same as well for relentless racing, albeit his endeavours will definitely be relentless in the Ford Mustang, ahead of Mikey Storey, who starts 9th, 3rd place in the Pro class and qualified for Dexterous Motorsports, but something tells me that the British driver will not be too upset about that, because he'll want to be maintaining those podium finishes. Christian Beltrek, his rival from Germany, the America MA70 esports driver, was only half a 10th behind and complete your top 10. But what about outside the top 10, I hear you ask? Well, we make our way to 11th, and on that 6th row of the grid, you're going to have on his debut, Sean Connor in the elite class, and it's the Connor Bros driver there who's one of the two with a first name beginning with S, and therefore we'll tell you the difference right now. Sean Connor is in the elite class, and in the Premier class it will be Shane Connor. Meanwhile, we can see Hendrik Zilka starting on pole position for the Premier drivers there for Old Dudes in Cars Blue. Well done to him. That's a monster pole lap there by the best part of a 10th or so over Alan Leather for UKSimRacing Mansell. But between the two of them on the 7th row of the grid, it's going to be Darren Sharples for Old Dudes in Cars Blue. And then on row number 8, we have Cy Anthony for UKSimRacing Price ahead of Jack Barker for Made for Racing, as those two look to go toe-to-toe once again. And then for the Made for Racing drive, it's going to be Joe Sparrow, who starts 17th for JST Motorsports, with a 3rd place in qualifying in the Premier class. A bit more pace on the cards today for him, ahead of your pole sitter for the Evo class. It's none other than Thomas Weston, who right now definitely is looking to go 3 for 3 here today, and is looking very quick because he's outpaced the rest of the Evo, the field, by a sizable margin, of which you'll see how much very shortly. Because along the way to the rest of the Evos, you've got to go through Peter Cox first, who starts 19th for Slow and Steady Racing, and also Stephen Donnelly for JST Motorsports. They complete your top 20, and outside the top 20, that is where you'll start to find other Evo drivers, including firstly, 2nd place Evo driver of DWR with SimCoach setups of Simon Hartley. He starts 21st ahead of Samuel Clark for Dexterous Motorsports, and the championship leader there having a difficult qualifying session, no doubt about it. Richard White begins this one 3rd of the Evos in 23rd for UKSimRacing Mansell, ahead of SimCoach's Robin Pownier, who once again finds himself not on the best end of qualifying, but the Corvette looks to try and go strong here at the circuit, which has made its first ever test debut back in 2024, the GT3 machine. Then we do have Richard Jones, 25th for Slow and Steady Racing, ahead of Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Mansell, with Edward Berry struggling qualified as well for UKSimRacing Hill. 27th was the best he could get out of the car, but he is ahead of Luke Sherlock, who starts 28th, and then we do have Daniel Pace for Old Dudes in Cars, and Austin Graff for Axis Simsports, who complete your top 30. Outside the top 30, there's still a few more rows to go. On row number 16, it's going to be Yavi Sierra, the privateer, the elite driver, once again having a miserable qualified performance. He'll be hoping for everything in the race, ahead of Joel Loudon for SimRacing International, same privateer Ryan, who switched from the Aston Martin to the Ford Mustang for this round. And we do have James Colley starting 33rd for UKSimRacing Hill, ahead of Rob Windsor, his teammate. They're together, but they won't want to be that far down the order. And then we do have Joseph Preston for JST Motorsports on row 18 in the company of Alex Brown. And then the Slow and Steady Racing drivers followed up by the Giacovelli family, with Daryl Giacovelli just ahead of Darren Giacovelli. And then we do have, starting 39th with no valid lap, Shane Connor there, also making his debut for Connor Bros. And alongside him will be 40th place Carl Tivoli with no valid lap. He'll be last but not least in the Evo class and overall. So as the field is set, ladies and gentlemen, and they are making the way back to us now, they're not too far away. Well, the blimp camera shows them all together, and Joe Nathan and Richard Simnor very close in company, and once they make the one around right now, you can understand the fact you could cut the tension with a knife between these two, because it definitely has been a championship fight that for the first 3 rounds of the season was looking to go the way of one driver in particular, and it was Joe Nathan, who seemed to have everything in his grasp. But as we have gone into the second half of this season, well, it has been Richard Simnor who's restored parity and then managed to inch his way back ahead. But will we see more of the same today? Will we see Nathan find a way to strike back? Well, they're only a little bit away from going green flag racing as they weave and wind their way down the Auburn Straight here. They're all trying to get as much tyre temperature as possible. They're very eager to find it before they go racing. They're going to need it. But there's only one corner before we go green flag racing, ladies and gentlemen, and it's to Richard Simnor to take us to the green for what will be an absolutely jaw-dropping 60 minutes of racing. And it's lights out and away we go here for what is another round of brilliant racing action as they roar the way down towards turn 1. Richard Simnor gets a good start, but meanwhile it's been Kaus a bit further behind. Loudon's been caught up, as has well the old dudes in cars machine, but Simnor holds on to lead as Christian first battles side by side, but contact there. First goes sideways. They all go sideways. They make the way towards the barrier. Multiple cars off. Looks though that Jack Barker being caught up in the Kaus as well. He's been able to avoid most of it, but loses multiple places. And as they all make the way on through, we're going to have to get a replay of what exactly happened there. Thomas Weston somehow has leapt up to 10th place in all the madness as a slight Anthony up into 11th, but several drivers have been caught up there, and that's not the way you want the race to start whatsoever. But I think that's a multi-car collision that's only had a domino effect added onto it. But as they all head down towards the hairpin via Big Bend, well, meanwhile, Richard White under a bit of pressure there from Nathan Anstis, and Richard White's gained a lot of places, so has Anstis here, as Richard Jones also tries to get involved for slow and steady racing. Up the inside he goes, and trying to make one over the pro driver as the premier driver, and when he's going to be able to do so, or is he, as they swerve their way out of the hairpin through the kinks, and now through Fangio they go. It's still side by side here as they get ready to do battle into the braking zone ahead. And the same can be said for Alan Lever, who looks up the inside here of Samuel Clark, rubs all the paint off of Clark's right-hand door in the meantime, albeit there they'll be exchanging insurance numbers after that one for the repair work. And as they come through in towards Tower Bend, well, Alan Lever right now is not hanging about whatsoever. Both drivers have lost places since the start of the race, and Hendrik Zilk has been a loser as well, because Joe Sparrow has somehow snuck his way into the Premier League. There he goes to Majestic Motorsports, and I think right now he's going to be very happy with that, because he's been trying to chase a win so far this season, and it has not come to him. And a lot of frustration, I think, bubbling over in Germany last time out towards the end of the race, but right now he's got to keep his cool and keep up the pace. As they make the way now back down the Allman Straight here to complete what will be that first lap. We've got several cars in the pit lane being repaired, including Carl Tivoli, also Alex Brown, also Christer Halsoy, Christian Furs and Daniel Pace. If they can get those cars repaired, well, we will get a replay of what happened right at the start in due order. As meanwhile, we look back to the very front of the field, and Richard Simnor and Joe Nathan together here as they make the way through turn number 17. And as they come out of the corner, powering the way down, well, right now Richard Simnor holding on for now as they go on to lap number 2. So it's Simnor who leads it overall ahead of Nathan, followed by Davies, then Harper, top 4 of elite drivers. Then you have your pro leader, Mikey Storey, who may not put it on pole in the qualified session, but he's definitely the leader of the pros right now. Sean Cotter, meanwhile, on his debut for Cotter Bros, he sits in 6th ahead of Casper Brotner, followed by Christian Maltrek, 2nd of the pro drivers in 8th. Then we've got Sharples in 9th. Then we have your Evo leader, Thomas Weston, who right now, if he was a magician, he'd definitely be the Harry Potter of this group, because of the fact he somehow magically made his way inside the top 10. And well, how can he hold on to it? Because if so, that would be an incredible result there. And he's ahead of sight and his best the rest, with Joe Sparrow sitting as your Premier leader in 12th. Peter Cox is then in 13th ahead of Alan Lever and Samuel Clark, who are 2nd and 3rd in Premier respectively. Simon Hartley, meanwhile, is your 2nd Evo driver. He's in 17th. Robert Powd is behind him. And it's Richard White, who's your 3rd place Evo driver, just behind, as you can see him there in the rear of the picture. But Jack Barker here fighting hard versus Nathan Anstis into the hairpin, and right now Mr. Sir Bottle Job is his nickname on the side of the car. That's what the initials SBJ stand for, and well, he's trying to keep Nathan Anstis at bay, at least for the time being, as he makes his way up towards what will be turn number 10 once again. But Anstis right now keeping that mental pressure on as much as he can, and well, that's the one thing between these two drivers, they know each other so well, it's going to come down to micro margins, and right now neither driver looking to wilt. But towards the back of the field, we do have Darryl Giacomelli up the inside of a heavily wounded Harry Bow Ford Mustang of Stephen Donnelly. Donnelly was definitely in the heart of all the madness at the start of the race, and we'll find out very shortly exactly where he was in the beating at the heart of that incident, because it definitely was a nasty one there, and not one we'll hope to have repeated. But most drivers have been able to survive it, albeit with perhaps some damage, but for the most part, it's only seen a few drivers drop out. We never want to see a driver drop out of the race, but the fact that it's only collected a couple of drivers compared to what it could have collected is a good news story. Speaking of stories, Ryan Davies here. The Battle of the Ford Mustangs between himself and Raz Harper. They are falling away from the top 2, but they're now starting to settle in for their own little fight for 3rd as they make the way on around through Sunset Bend. Multiple ways of cutting that corner, but there's only one way to get close to that exit wall, and neither driver wants to make the way there. Meanwhile, we can see here Sean Cotter battling side by side with Mikey Storey as a lot of drivers run very close toward the rear of the picture. Storey there side by side. Oh, goodness me, they get caught close to each other. Storey's trying to make the move here into Genderby corner. He is going to move up into 5th place. Head of Sean Cotter and Casper Brotner now. Looks at the switchback here, so Cotter's going to be mugged not once but twice. Or is he? No, he's not. Cotter comes defensive and says, no, can do, sir. And meanwhile, Casper Brotner is immediately quite obedient there and doesn't want to put too much pressure on, because at the end of the day, he knows that this race is won over distance, not won over a single lap. As Christian Maltrett and Darren Sharples are queuing up behind here, and for Sharples in particular right now, I think he'll be fancying his chances in this Mercedes AMG Evo today, given the fact that this Mercedes has a reputation for being much like the Ford Mustang. It's slightly better on fuel for slightly less acceleration out of the higher speed bends. But away through the hairpin. Plenty of hip checks there, as we can see Richard Simnor. We say hello to him in the YouTube chat, and I hope you're doing well, Richard. And well, as we do see Darren Sharp will stay quite close into Valtrek. He's just settling into the race distance. Albeit I think there's going to be a bit more here between Connor and Brotner this time, as Sean Connor has to go absolutely late on the brakes there into what is turn number 10 in order to make sure he holds on at Cunningham. That's all the hard graft he's putting together right now. Meanwhile, Alan Lever a little bit further behind. Now finds himself all over the back of Peter Cox, albeit he wants to get ahead of him and get onto the back of Joe Sparrow. That's easier said than done, and keeping in mind that Lever and Cox have battled each other in previous seasons. And indeed, for the uninitiated, Alan Lever being a long-time member of the UKSimRacing GT3 grid, Peter Cox was on the grid for several seasons, then took an extended break, and he is back once again. And both of these drivers champions in their own categories over the course of historical seasons, with Peter Cox, of course, having that legendary battle between himself and John Eddowes from Tiki Sim Sport in what was, if my memory serves me correctly, season 8, where they were battling over the rights in the second of our classes, which I think at the time was the pro class. And meanwhile, Alan Lever, of course, being the only driver to ever take a championship crown. I always bring it up, and he always says thank you for reminding me when I do say it, but he's the only driver in UKSimRacing League history to have ever taken a championship without a single win in the season. He picked up second and thirds over the entirety of the season, and everybody else stumbled to what was falling just short, where everyone else did pick up wins. Rob Zelby in particular picked up multiple wins that season, but for every win he had a dismal round, and Alan Lever meanwhile really was Mr. Consistent, although he was very close to winning the season finale, only to just miss out by a slender margin. But still, come what it may, it's a historical record which some would say you don't want to keep, but it does go to show you that sometimes it's all about the consistency for a championship crown. And right now Alan Lever's not had the most consistent season, but he has definitely shown a lot of pace. With 2 wins, he'll be looking to try and make it a third here today. But first, he's got to get his way past Peter Cox, who's not a fellow Premier driver. He's got to try and get past what is a pro driver there, and then go hunting after the Premier leader. Meanwhile, here comes Robin Pound here, dive up the inside on Simon Hartley, in towards the hairpin. Hartley plays ball here, but he didn't want to necessarily because Richard White's going to get close. So right now, Simon Hartley knows there's more at stake. Meanwhile, Pound here just simply says to him, can you politely get out of the way? I'm going to go hunting after Hendrik Zilka, the pole man, who's dropped all the way down the order in Premier and is my class rival. So Hartley in the end does let it go, albeit Pound here, they're having to brake very late into Cunningham Bend, but he gets it done in that Corvette and now moves a little bit further onwards as James Connolly side by side there with Richard Jones, and those two drivers exiting their way out. But that's a place made by James Connolly up to 6th in Premier now, so he's having a good run here. Is Connolly starting to move forward, and we'll look at a bit further back. We can give you a status update. Luke Sherlock was caught up in that opening lap collision, and once again the Pennzoil BMW finds itself in a bit of a heartbreak mode. You've got to feel for him, he's just not having any luck this season, but to be fair to him, he keeps his positive spirits better than anybody else on this grid as we come back to Ryan Darris and Raz Harper. But as they roar the way, all the way through turn number 17, we do say hello to Budget Racing Noob, or alternatively Alan Lever there. I don't know if you're watching right now. I hope you're doing well, Alan. And it says, I'd swap the wins of this year for the consistency or luck of my championship winning year. And I can completely sympathise with you there, Alan. I think many would, to be fair. But that's why you're absolutely loved in this series, in the fact that you are Mr. Consistent, and also you do have that brilliant turn of pace every so often. But speaking of a turn of pace, Mikey Storey right now needs one, because Sean Connor is right there with him as he looks to go up the inside here. Connor right now is not showing any more patience here. He's getting a bit fed up with this, is Connor. I think he's enjoying the racing, but he knows that Harper and Davies are fighting each other. He wants to be clear. Back up the inside he goes. Small squeeze there as they make their way through turn number 5, and they give each other racing room. Casper Ottner surely not going to squeeze in between them. No, he backs out immediately there. No, and that was never going to be enough racing room between the 3 drivers. Brotner being smart there, because Connor and Story immediately closed the door on him, and if he had not backed out of the throttle, they would have all been going around together. Meanwhile, Christian Baltrek under pressure from Darren Sharples. This is getting incredibly intense for 5th place here as they all come through. And right now, Mikey Storey keeping everybody behind him as Baltrek battles there with Casper and Brotner. They're side by side. Baltrek gets ahead of Brotner, and here comes Connor once again looking around the outside. Now Storey goes defensive. You can understand why Storey's going so defensive. He wants to back Connor into Baltrek and Brotner and get them all to fight each other. But Sean Connor doesn't want to play to the script. He's decided to tear it up and ad-lib it. And his ad-lib is essentially saying, I want to be ahead. And you see the long queue of cars there. Thomas Weston's onto this back of this now. So is your Premier leader behind the Evo leader, Joe Sparrow, Peter Cox and Leverley, all queuing up here as they make the way up towards Bishop Quarter at turn number 14. And this is a pack right now of essentially what is 12 cars all together in the space of 3 seconds. It is incredibly tight as Peter Cox there takes an incredibly tight line in towards Le Mans Bend, and that is by intention in order to cut off some speed and see his braking marker. But with that, we need to take a look back at what happened at the very start of the race, and in particular try to understand why it went wrong for so many drivers. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we are going to be able to get you that green flag start, although there's some difficulty for Alex Brown on the formation lap from what we gather, albeit we haven't got any replay footage of that unfortunately. But what we can do is it went wrong for Alex Brown, but it also went wrong for some other drivers, and here exactly is how it went wrong at the start. This was as we went green flag race, and one of the drivers who was caught up in all the madness was none other than Christer Halsoy as they made the way away. Let's look to the blimp camera if we can. We might get a better view. So Halsoy had a reasonable start, to be fair, got the jump as he made his way down towards the opening braking zone, but as they went onto the anchors, Furs on the outside, Halsoy went a little bit deep there. Furs came across and small tap between the two of them upset Furs' car. Halsoy went sideways as well, so an innocent bit of contact there, and on a different day they would have survived it. Stephen Donnelly came charging into the side, and that is where it set off the chain reaction. But what exactly happened then to Luke Sherlock in all of this, I wonder? Because for Sherlock, something went very wrong early on. And can we get a view of it with regards to Luke Sherlock's car? Well, we are looking a bit further back towards Rob Windsor. There is Sherlock just in front, in fact. Can we see what went wrong? Oh my goodness! Car straight into the barrier. There's all Joe Loudon as well. There were several cars into the barrier, and that was, I think, Daniel Payne being caught up there before he even got green flag racing. So that went wrong for them, and then Sherlock made his way through the bend, and as he did, well, cars in front went on the brakes immediately, and will manage to avoid it all. But then Jack Barker came back on. Oh, a little bit of tap there between Sherlock and Barker, but no love lost between them. So Sherlock survived the opening couple of corners despite it all, but then what went wrong after that, I hear many ask. And well, it looks as though he managed to survive it at least for a few bits. I think he had a bit of an incident on lap number 3 a bit later. Speaking of which, we can get a replay of that now, and this is what happened to Luke Sherlock a bit later on. This was on lap number 3. So after surviving the first 2 laps, made his way down. Oh, could it be a bit of contact on another driver? Austin Graff taking very good cat-like reflexes, and Luke Sherlock bouncing off the wall. Car coming to a stop. Cole Tivley doing very well to see that coming. So everybody in the end managed to avoid being put into a bit of a domino effect there, but that was definitely a nightmare moment for many a driver. And we also had this big moment for Cole Tivley on lap number 2, and this was him going very deep at turn number 1, but somehow just about keeping it on the circuit. Oh my goodness! And that was the BMW M4 behind of Sun Steady Racing's, I believe, Richard Jones there tapping on the rear, not knowing where exactly to go. So quite a bit of drama there right at the start. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's return to your racing. So, plenty of drama in the early stage of the race, but now as we come back to all the racing, what else is to unfold? Because we've still got the best part of 3/4 of the race, plus, of course, a final lap to go. And Mikey Storey, well, he is still causing a big bottleneck here of a lot of drivers all together, albeit they all seem to have spaced out a little bit here for a brief moment. I say for a brief moment, and I emphasise it massively, because immediately Darren Sharples goes the attack here around the outside of Weston. And right now, side by side, they come on lap number 7 here. They're going too wide all the way through. Thomas Weston, to be fair, is not backing off, and as they make the way onwards up towards what is turn number 10, well, Sharples does get ahead for a brief moment using the speed of that Mercedes. The McLaren, meanwhile, my good lord, Weston has got a bit between his teeth, but I think again he has got that little devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other, and the angel is just winning out for Weston at the moment in the fact that he's saying to him, look, you're leading the Evo class, fight them, but don't do anything to scupper that lead. And Weston definitely learning from what happened in the earlier stage of the season, particularly rounds 1 and 2, where there could have been wins there. But unfortunately, things did not work out for Weston. And it took several rounds before he finally picked up his first win, and since then he's been unstoppable with regards to victories. But that's the way it goes, and sometimes when you're less familiar with the grid, you have to settle into that rhythm. But Weston definitely, right now, really showing an educated form of racing here today. But as we do say hello to a few more of you in the YouTube chat, we've been a bit rude not to say hello to the likes of Edward Berry, nor Anstis Races, nor none other than Richard Simnor, or Luke Sherlock, or Sam Clark, and I hope you're all doing well, guys. And obviously we say hello to Christer Halsoy, who gives his own thoughts on the incident between himself and Christian Furs. It was very unfortunate unfortunate there, but I definitely would agree with you. And indeed, with Richard Simnor, it's just one of the unfortunate ones, and nothing really either you did wrong. I think Richard Simnor summed it up nicely there. Cold tyres and a little bit of enthusiasm mixed together. And well, unfortunately, unlike sugar and spice and everything nice for the Powerpuff Girls state, it came out as chemical X and highly toxic. But unfortunately, as we make that comparison there, and that gives you an idea of how old I am, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that I grew up watching Powerpuff Girls. Well, right now, channeling is in a buttercup with regards to a bit of the coloration of the car, is Shane Connor here as he looks to go on the attack versus what is Yavi Sierra as they roar the way all around through the corner. Two very nice liveries on the cars, to be fair. And as they come up towards turn number 3, well, right now, Sierra, he may have qualified a long way down the order in the elite class, but that's not going to stop him from having a good time and fighting with a number of premiers and pros as he tries to crusade his way back up the order. Now, we have had a couple of drivers make their way into the pit lane quite recently, including none other than Ashley Coutland, who picks up the damage on the car, and I believe he has tried to clear that as much as possible. Alex Brown has come in as well. We've also had none other than Christian Furs and Christer Halsoy. They're all back out there, however, which is great to see, and right now it does look as though everyone's settling into this one for the long haul. As they do, settling at the front, Richard Simnor now back into lead, as we've unfortunately had an incident for Jack Barker that's seen him had to tow to the pits. I'm here in my ear. We're going to get a replay of that very shortly. And, well, for Jack Barker, after what's been the success of a couple of rounds, it does seem as though the Lamborghini Huracan has come back to bite him today. Albeit we'll find out what exactly has happened there in short order, whether it's his own volition or not. But Simnor is pulling away from Nathan. Gap is 1.2 seconds. But Joe Nathan, of course, he's been in this position before. Many of you may remember at Catalunya, where Nathan did fall back to a degree, but the Rage Against the Game esports driver in the end used the fuel consumption that his Ferrari is very well known for in terms of how light it is on fuel compared to that Ford Mustang in order to get ahead in the pit stops. And could that be what he's targeted today? The only thing is, he needs to make sure he really keeps Simnor within a second here, because if he lets that gap open up, the Ford Mustang driver may be able to gradually pull away. We will see as they make the way now into the next portion of this race, with Raz Harper having broken away from Ryan Davies. He has found a way on through in the end, albeit they have been fighting very hard, these two. But to be fair to him, the DDK Racing Team drivers, he bounces his way off the curbs there, has finally made some progress. They'll be very pleased with that. But onwards he goes, and as he does, oh my goodness, Richard Jones sideways at the pit lane entry. Well, that's not how you enter the pits, but that is definitely a bit of a moment of nightmares there for the Slow Steady Racing driver. We're going to have to find out what exactly happened to him in short order, because that's got to be contender for what has got to be one of the worst moments of a pit lane entry that I've ever seen in my time of commentating, whether it be real life or sim racing. I don't think Richard Jones intended to be there. I think he might have been escorted there, but how exactly he ended up there, and to be so pinpoint precise at a 90-degree angle to the pit lane entry, you do not see that normally. And in fact, I think we might have some replays immediately coming up, starting off with what happened to Jack Barker. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and then we will see what happened to Richard Jones. So this is none other than what happened to Jack Barker. So pit wise lonesome, I think already involved a bit of moan, and in turns 3 and 4, car went left, then went right, but unfortunately the rear end of the Lamborghini came back to bite, and that was a tow to the pits down. I think something wrong with the car. But as for Richard Jones, his pit lane entry, here we go. This was making his way around, and I suspect bumps in the road here, upsetting the rear end of that BMW, goes loose, tries to power through it, and as he did so, wham bam, and into the wall and around. Well, 10 out of 10 for the way he's parked it, but that is not the way he's wanted it to go, and in the end, unfortunately, I suspect that's just using the throttle of the steering to try and counteract the car, and in the end, the car saying no. So Richard Jones had a bit of a calamity, and back to your live racing it is, ladies and gentlemen. So as we make our way back, well, we've got plenty more to come, that's for certain. And right now, we're still 42 minutes on the clock. There is a lot more to unfold. You have Sierra here fighting side by side with Edward Berry, for example. And as they roar the way on down towards what is turn number 17. Side by side they enter, and the 308 driver here will find Berry defending hard, and Shane Connor squeezes up the inside there, but is it all for naught or not? Well, Sierra's going to try and power his way around the outside as Connor tries to break away from Austin Graff directly behind. So Graff here getting a little bit eager to try and find a way in as we ride on board. They'll make their way across. Graff there, oh my goodness, and Sierra, they're cutting across. I think he did make some contact with the front left bumper of what is Austin Graff's car, and Graff Graf backed off the throttle immediately there in reaction, and understandably he was worried about the fact it could be damaged, but here he goes back up the inside, and well, Austin Graf gets ahead for now, slams the door firmly shut in the face of his rival, and there is Yavi Sierra, and I suspect Sierra might have backed off there, recognising the fact that after their initial contact into turn number 1, it might be just a little bit of an apology by letting it go, because Austin Graf almost went to the wall, and Sierra would have gone with him there if they kept their throttle in it for all the way down that straight. But as they've emerged safely from Gender Bean and also the turn 7 hairpin, Joseph Preston a bit further behind there. He's now getting onto the back of this. And Graf right now has an opportunity to chase down Shane Cotter as the Access Sport driver sees the target in front of him, but he knows the Cotter Bros driver is right now all over the back of Edward Berry and looking for a way into the fight. But coming on through, we do see a question there with regards to Joe Nathan's livery. And for some reason, today, out of all the liveries on these cars, Joe Nathan's livery has once again decided to default to the alternative black and yellow livery rather than the Rage Against the Game Esports official yellow livery. We are going to look into that once again for next week's broadcast. But these little technical hiccups do happen in the liveries every so often, ladies and gentlemen, and we do apologise. But we'll see what we can do there. We might even see if we can find alternative means of getting that livery on the car, because it is a lovely one, that Ferrari, and it is a shame it's not there today. But as we say hello to Robin Pownier, who says hello all, and hello to you, Robin. Hope you're doing well. Well, meanwhile, speaking of one driver who's doing well here, he may not have qualified well, but right now he is leading class. He's found his way past Joe Sparrow. It is Samuel Clark, and unfortunately we can't get you a replay of how he found his way ahead of Sparrow. What we can tell you is he has done it on circuit, and Sparrow right now in second directly behind. He is playing the watching game as Hendrik Zilka and Robin Pownier are also there. And Pownier right now in that Corvette, to be fair, is showing a very good run as he roars his way all around through turn number 1 and in towards turn number 3. Right now, it started all the way back in 5th place and quite a way down. He is running 4th in the Premier Class right now, and he's all over the back of Zilka. And in fact, he could be, of course, for not just the first podium, but he even has an opportunity to try and take the win here as the Corvette driver. Don't rule him out. And we know that he might be the solo Corvette driver on this grid, but he does make that Corvette work, whereas many others struggle with it. But down towards turn number 7 they come, and as they do, we'll pound it right now there or thereabouts, even if some of the paint has been wiped off the side of the car. But as he heads upwards there, indeed the Corvette, a big fan of it is Richard Simnor. Indeed, I must admit, I'm a personal fan of it, as he rolls his way around there. 6.2 litre V8 there in the rear of the car, or in the mid-engine rear-wheel drive configuration and layout. And the first of the Corvettes in terms of excuse me, they're 6.2 litre V8 machines, which have seen the engine put behind the driver rather in front. From the C7 to the C8, but the C8 car, it has gone behind. And some would say that's controversy, that's blasphemy in the world of Corvette, but not so, because it has worked out very nicely for the likes of Pratt & Miller Motorsports over the last couple of years. So the GTE machine being the original C8 race car, the C8R, now to the Corvette Z06 GT3 C8R, if you will. As meanwhile, coming to someone who's not in a Corvette, they're in a McLaren, Sean Cotter. Well, I don't think he'll want to be in a Corvette here because he's happy with the McLaren. And Christian Maltret, meanwhile, your leader of the Pro Class, who has found his way past Mikey Storey over the last couple of laps. I think we've got a replay to explain what's exactly happened there in short order. But Christian Maltret right now is trying to make a way to the first win of his pro season. Will he be able to do so? We'll see, because there's Catherine Rotler, there's Story, and there's Darren Sharples. This Pro Class is absolutely razor tight right now. And, well, Maltret might be ahead for the moment, but of course we do have a round of pit stops to come, and you never know, the strategy could certainly shake things up to the bone. But right now, Maltret trying to find his way past Sean Cotter, and well, if these two were in the same class, I think I'd be losing my voice with regards to the battle in between them, because they are absolutely going all in here. And credit where it's due to Sean Cotter, the fact that he's new on the grid, and right now he's finding himself in hot water with a driver in another class, but to be fair, he's not giving in, he's racing incredibly fairly, and that's what we love to see. What we also love to see is moves to the lead, and this is how we saw the change of the lead for the Pro Class with Christian Maltrek moving into lead ahead of Mikey Storey. So this was coming out to 1 in towards turns 2 and 3 on lap number 10. So 3 laps ago it was. Oh, goodness me, Mikey Storey taking some grass there on entry. The rear right tyre just running slightly onto the grass. And in the end, my goodness, Casper Rotner saying, no can do. I'm not waiting for you. I'm going to hop over the curb. And, well, Darren Sharples at the end couldn't quite seize the opportunity. But Storey Hood finally put some time between himself and Conor Maltrek. Pratt Storey is one of those drivers who thrives off of pressure, to be fair, because in the end, well, I think with that gap, he became a little bit complacent. That's not being rude about him, but that's what led to the mistake. Indeed, just thought the circuit was a bit wider than it actually was. Back to your live racing we go. So as we come on back, well, definitely an intriguing moment there for Mikey Storey and indeed for the Dexterous Motorsports team. But they'll be hoping that things will be a bit more straightforward from this point onwards, and that Christian Halsoy will be gradually forced back to them. Coming onwards and up towards what will be turn at number 17. And as they do, well, what's happening in the Premier class further behind? Well, there are your 4 rapscallions who are all chasing after the lead, with Samuel Clark being the leader of the group. And as he makes his way up towards turn number 17 right now, Sparrow, Zilka and Pioneer are all closing up together. This is going to be an interesting fight. I'm absolutely excited for this because the thing is with Samuel Clark, over the last couple of rounds, on paper at least, he has not been the fastest driver in the Premier class, but he has been one of the most consistent. Joe Sparrow has been on rising form and pace. However, a little bit of red mist in Germany just cost him what could have been a good set of points. Hendrik Zilka, a driver who's not really found first gear this season, has only now found 4th gear, it would seem, as he's making his way onwards. And Robin Pioneer is there as well. And this is the best we've seen from Pioneer, who normally has been fighting to just make his way into the top 5, but he's very firmly right in the hunt for the podium here today. And you've got Shane Connor quite some way back, meanwhile, back in 5th place of the class, ahead of Austin Graff, Rob Windsor and James Conley, with the class really spreading out there. And unfortunately we did have the demise of Daniel Pays and also Richard Jones much earlier in the race, with Jones parking it on the pit lane entry and Daniel Pays into the barrier before he crossed the start finish line. But Edward Berry a little bit further back behind him. Well, Berry right now looking for a way around the outside in the battle of the 2 McLarens, and Gabby Sierra, well, understandably, the Mercedes driver here thinking about an opportunity to get involved as Edward Berry looks once, can't quite find it, and Yavi Sierra also now says, why don't you look twice and let me have a move? But Shane Connor then runs out wide, takes a bit of grass with him, and that's going to be a cut to the track. He wants to burn a slowdown penalty for that, and Edward Berry will squeeze on through here, and Yavi Sierra is going to push him through as they make their way down towards turn number 10 here. Will Connor puts it in the middle of the road. Is he going to be able to find a way back up the inside or around the outside of either one? And the answer is no. He'll tuck it and lose the 2 places for a small excursion to the grass coming out turn number 7. But Yavi Sierra's not going to be too comfortable here as he makes his way in towards Tower Bend at 13. And right now, Connor is there. Joseph Preston is closing little by little. The 5th place man in the Evo class. He fancies his chances, as does Darren Giacomelli behind him, 2 seconds off. But Preston and Giacomelli are both tries to watch out for here because they're both chasing the top 5. And Preston, he's chasing another podium this season. It's a little way away, but can he find it? Meanwhile, in what's been a turn of events, we need to bring you up to speed with this. We have had a change of the leader of the Evo class. It happened some time ago. Unfortunately, we haven't got a replay available, but Simon Hartley has found a way into lead ahead of Richard White and Thomas Weston, who was in that pack running from what was at the time 5th place all the way through to 14th place. Something tells me Weston might have been caught up in a bit of a mistake, and in fact as the car weaves from side to side, he's struggling with that McLaren. I wonder if he's had a knock to the wall somewhere and he's having to fight against the front suspension that doesn't want to point to the straight line. Well, we don't know the full story, but what we do know is that Thomas Weston definitely right now is not where he wants to be. He wants to be leading the Evo class here, but Simon Hartley has that accolade, and Richard White's also just a little bit further up the road, who you can see there in the UKSimRacing machine, the Ferrari, running in 2nd or 15th overall. But as we have some pit stops playing out, we do have Rob Windsor and also none other than Darren Giacomelli and Joe Preston all coming on in. So the first pit stops are now getting on the board as we're heading towards the halfway point of this race. And all these drivers right now, I think I'm one up here and thinking, okay, is it time to pit? Is it not? And if you're Mikey Storey at this point, well, you have Darren Sharples directly behind you. Christian Halsoy has found his way past Sean Connor. So therefore, you would imagine for what his story at this point, his mindset is going to be, well, either stick to your guns and force Sharples to pit first or pit with you, or alternatively get yourself out of the fighting formation and find some track space. The only problem is, well, if he was to pit at the moment, I suspect he would be coming out of some traffic further down the road, and I suspect he may find himself coming out around our 23rd place runner of Stephen Donnelly in the Ford Mustang. That's definitely seen some damage today. But as we do see Storey making his way onwards, Sharples with him for now. No change. And Maltrek and Sean Connor, they may have swapped places. I think Maltrek will know that for Sean Connor, this is just another turn in the race. As they make their way out of this corner and on to the next lap. Will either one defect to the pit lane? No, they both stay out. Will Mikey Storey defect to the pit lane? No, he doesn't. But Darren Sharples has a monster run there coming out of the final bend. We jump aboard with the old dudes in cars at Blue 277, and this Mercedes right now close enough to look for a move, but in the end decides not to. As they make their way for the long sweeping left-hander. And as they roar the way out of the corner, well, right now, Sharp was backed off massively there. In fact, backing off so much, he didn't carry as much speed out the corner as he could have. And, well, I think that's also going to be to protect the tyres and offset the dirty air. But right now for Darren Sharp, who's definitely playing his cards close to his chest here and looking to just try and poke and probe where he can. Samuel Clark, Sparrow, Zilka and also Paunia, they're all still together in the top 4 of the Premier class. They're running in 9th through to 12th overall at the moment. None of these drivers yet to make the way into the pit lane. I can understand why, because I think they're all waiting to see what the next driver decides to do, because on that basis they will then react accordingly. But one of them has surely got to think about making the move soon, and I get the feeling it's going to be Zilka or Paunia who decides to go for it, because they're both at the back of this pack, and therefore technically they've got the most to gain and the least to lose by going for the undercut strategy. Meanwhile, of course, if you've got track position like Samuel Clark or Joe Sparrow, you want to hold on to that position for as long as you can, because track position can be just as valuable. We have seen here at Sebring today that overtaking is highly possible with these GT3 machines, and therefore a little bit of bravery is also very much welcomed. But we'll have to see whether they make the overtakes on the road or in the pit lane as we do get to the halfway mark. And as we do, well, our race leader, he makes his way through the final corner once again, does the DCW racing driver. And Richard Simnor right now makes one out, and there you can see Joe Nathan stays with him, and then we do have a bit of time of 10 seconds back to Ryan Davies. Here he is in the Empire Motorsport Ford Mustang, and once he makes his way on out here, right now definitely for Ryan Davies, looking as though it is all a bit of a lonely race after spending so long battling with Raz Harper. But where is Raz Harper? Here he is, the DDK Racing Team driver. Don't fret, because he is in this one to try and chase down a podium, his first podium of the season, but he decided to go for the undercut, and in fact, it has worked out for him very nicely. The team have done a great job in calling him in at the right time and getting back out and clear air. He's down in 19th. He's got 5.5 seconds to Shane Connor in front of him, and he's got 2.5 seconds to Austin Graff behind. So Raz Harper is not being hindered too much here. In fact, he has plenty of clear air, and I think he'll be hoping he can put in some qualifying laps here in order to be able to leap his way back ahead. We will see whether that's what comes to pass. As Hendrik Zilka, well, he decides he doesn't want to play part of the game of the top 4 of the Premier class. He's pitted, whereas the others have stayed out. So he's decided to go for the undercut. We're going to keep an eye on him as well, because he may just make this work. As Mikey Storey, meanwhile, and Darren Sharples, they fight over second in pro, and Christian Maltrek is briefly off in the distance. You saw him in the camera for a brief moment. Well, right now, Maltrek does have control. The Storey and Sharples may be able to reassert some control by just picking the right time to pit. But back to Hendrik Zilka, he makes his way out the pit lane, and as he does so, well, he re-emerges in 21st place, just behind Stephen Donnelly, and Donnelly has come into the pits in this racer repair work of the car, so Donnelly will have to come back in at some point, but with the pace that Donnelly's showing, it's equivalent to Zilka, so therefore you can imagine the old dudes in cars driver will be actually quite happy that he's got somebody in front of him who's 2 seconds up the road, and he won't catch him too soon. Austin Graff leads the pit lane very gradually, and as he does so, we've got some company heading down towards turn 1. And this is Darian Giacomelli and Joseph Preston, who fight over 5th and Evo still. Giacomelli holding on for now, and Preston just behind as they make the way onto what for them is lap number 16. But Preston is definitely starting to become a little bit stronger here as they make the way into the second half of this race. So I wonder whether the Porsche driver perhaps favours himself a bit of an advantage with regards to tyre life here. They can change tyres in the pits, of course, but they won't have enough time to change all 4 whilst also putting fuel in the car. They will normally have enough time to change 1, if not 2 tyres. And the aim of the game will be to change tyres on one side of the car. And what with this being a clockwise circuit, it will be the left-hand side tyres, which will take the change normally, because they're the ones who take a bit more wear. But meanwhile, not wearing out on his first stint at the moment is Ryan Davies. As he carries on here, he takes the lead of the race ahead of Sean Connor, with Richard Simnor and Joe Nathan being serviced to the pit lane. And well, as they're serviced, well, our top 5, they're all yet to pit. Simnor leaves the pit box, and where is Joe Nathan? Joe Nathan is right behind him, and in fact, Nathan has closed up a little bit as a result of that pit stop. So the Rage Against the Game esports driver doing what he does best, but unfortunately it has not been enough to enable him to get ahead. And unfortunately, he's come out with a little bit of traffic, with Richard White yet to pit right in front. Well, this is not good news for Joe Nathan, and right now, well, Richard White there can hold his track position. He's not under blue flag rules. They are on the lead lap, but the second place Evo driver here, well, if I was in his shoes, I would let Nathan go sooner rather than later, because otherwise Nathan is going to come through like a ball in a china shop, because he wants to chase down at Richard Simnor, and immediately there you can see Richard White steps aside and says to him, "You can have the road, I don't want it." And well, coming up through there, the Ferrari 326 right now only 1.4 seconds behind Simnor. He's brought that gap back down. It was practically a second as they left the pit lane, but now Nathan finds it back up to 1.5 seconds ahead. Has Richard Simnor been given a small lifeline here, or is it going to be the case that Nathan now will go to work in bringing that gap down and show us what pace he's got at his fingertips? Well, we'll have to see, because meanwhile, it's all changing foot on the pit lane exit, as that is going to be Edward Berry and Yavi Sierra side by side. And Ashley Coupland there in the Ford Mustang getting involved as well. Coupland battling for a lead position here versus Sierra as they roar their way through. And well, the relentless racing driver finds his way through there. And well, Yavi Sierra falls back, but these two had a good little ding-dong scrap over certain place in the elite. It may be for the last of the elite points today, but to be fair, they're enjoying themselves, and who can blame them as they make their way up towards the hairpin. Will Sierra look up the inside? No, he won't. Coupland in the end will hold that position directly behind Edward Berry, who is your full place Evo driver, and we believe on strategy that is accurate as well as on circuit. But as we now look back towards the very front of the field, Ryan Davies and Sean Connor are in, as is Mikey Storey. But meanwhile, Joe Sparrow stays out there. Robin Powdy are in. We have, of course, had a pit stop already take place for none other than what was Samuel Clark and Hendrik Zilka. And speaking of Zilka, well, he's made that undercut work because he has moved ahead of Samuel Clark as a result of the pit stops. So for Hendrik Zilka, a 2-second gain in the pits in terms of stationary time is converted into a 3.5-second gain end to end of the pit lane, and Samuel Clark is there behind. You can see the proof of the pudding, but now where is Robin Powdy going to come out of this? As we look to the blimp camera, there is your Mercedes driver, who right now is chasing down that first win of the season. Well, to the final corner he comes. It's a lovely exit there. That is poetry in motion. And where is Robin Powdy? He's making his way to the pit limiter line. There it is. He's building up the speed. Where is Zilka? Zilka's going to be there. He's going to be on the inside, and Hendrik Zilka gains another place. And right now, if you're Joe Sparrow, you've got to be quaking here, because Hendrik Zilka is coming along like a steam train, and he is absolutely not slowing down for anybody. He went for the undercut. He's gained 2. If he gains a 3rd, my gut tells me he may just pull this off. He may have enough pace, but Powdy now is going to try and get those tyres warmed back up as quickly as he can. If he can, he may have a chance here. Samuel Clark, 1.7 seconds back. If he hasn't got the pace, he's going to try and stay as close as he can and make sure that if they fight, he's there to gain and come up with some sort of master plan. But what will come of it? Because, of course, Sparrow is the only driver who has gone 18 laps without a pit stop. He is going to go the distance compared to everybody else, and well, is that going to work out for him, or is it going to work against him? We will see very shortly, because there he is, your overall leader. He will take a lead lap in the Premier Class today, and also overall, and he'll be very happy with that. And the JSD Motorsports team will be getting a little bit of time on the TV for the advertisers and sponsors. But as he makes his way through the final quarter, decides to intentionally go quite deep there to turn it into a V-shaped approach. Some take it very close to the wall, but not Sparrow. He decides to cut the corner in a different way. He makes his way in, so he's the final driver to make his maiden and only pit stop here on strategy. But as he does so, now the moment of truth. Where will he come out? Well, here comes Richard Simnor, race leader then, elite and overall. Nathan is 1.3 seconds behind, but they are exchanging lap time as if it is going out of style between the two of them. And meanwhile, Ryan Davies there in the rear of the picture. The Ford Mustang soldiers on, and Sparrow waits to be let go. There we can see Davies make his way onwards. Raz Harper not too far behind, so Harper in the end did not make the undercut work, but he has stayed relatively close. Sparrow is still being serviced. Here comes Sean Connor. 5th place elite driver moves up to 5th overall. Christian Malcharek is still leading in the pro class, but Mikey Storey is back there with him. Sparrow now leaves the pit lane. Here he comes, but where's Hendrik Zilka? There is Zilka, and there is the evidence, ladies and gentlemen. Hendrik Zilka takes the lead of the Premier Class. Sparrow may have gone the distance, he may have sipped all the fuel, but it's been for naught. He comes out full for these Premier drivers, and now he's got all the work to do, as has Samuel Clark, and Powdy and Zilka have gained massively, but Hendrik Zilka the most of all of them here, and the old dudes in cars driver now needs to hold on for the remainder of the distance, of which he does have 22.5 minutes to go. This is a long journey remaining at Sebring. This is going to be a test of stamina for Hendrik Zilka, but if he can do it, it will be one of the best wins of the season as he makes his way onwards, and that definitely is going to be an accolade for win of the season for any driver, because he's pulled this on strategy today and really come out of nowhere with it. But we'll have to see. Meanwhile, Joseph Preston has got ahead of Darren Giacovelli on strategy. They swap places, but Preston under pressure for 5th place in the Evo class as they head under braking in towards turn number 3. These two enjoyed a great little scrap for the final top 5 spot in said class. Can Preston hold on here? Well, we will see. No, he can't. He runs out wide. And that's going to be Giacovelli, who sweeps around at Big Ben and moves back into 5th place in the class, 22nd overall. But goodness me, close one moment and then it's not. But then again, a mistake could go the other way. And Joseph Preston's just got to keep his head down and hope now some fortune will favour him today. Meanwhile, next to the pit lane, here is Christian Furs. Christer Halsoy also makes way out. The two drivers who came together right at the start of the race will be a very innocent bit of contact, we should emphasise. But there they go, and indeed, just goes to show you, it's not about how you start, it's about how you end. And they're both looking to end this race with a checkered flag, which is lovely to see as they make their way onwards. Meanwhile, we do say hello there to Joe Nathan in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Joe. Hope you're doing well. We'll speak to Joe Nathan and Richard Simnor. Well, firstly, Joe, we're definitely going to be in contact with you in regards to making sure we can get your livery loaded correctly next time, because it does seem to never want to load correctly. But Richard Simnor right now, well, as he holds onto this lead, Nathan is matching him lap after lap. These two are absolutely as tight as it gets in terms of lap time. That last lap, Simnor a 2 minute 0.02. Nathan a 2 minute 0.04. It's coming down to the hundredths here. Neither driver right now has got a clear advantage over the other, and it is really track position that is making the difference. But as they head up towards turn number 10, Nathan right now really having to try and find a way to fail back versus Simnor and make sure that Simnor does not make it another win, as well as that championship is just very gradually swinging in the hands of the DCW Racing driver. But then again, we know the Rage Against the Game esports driver, that he's very close on pace. They have been equal pace all season, and it might literally just come down to who puts it on pole and can nail the pit stop. And there they go as they head onwards. And as they do, with some good banter there in the chat between the two drivers as they watch this broadcast back. And meanwhile, we come to Simon Hartley and Nathan Anstis, two McLaren drivers. Two drivers are familiar with each other from two different teams and two different classes. But your Evo leader right now finding that Nathan Anstis is acting as a little bit of a dam. And on the other side of the dam, trying to break its way through and flood the plane beyond it, is Thomas Weston. Weston right now is absolutely flying out there, and on average he is running at what is 1.2 seconds a lap faster than Simon Hartley. Weston, whatever went wrong earlier on, he has not let it dull his pace or his senses whatsoever, and right now he is only 2 seconds away from challenging for the Evo lead once again. So he's going to be one to watch. And these lap times continue to just tumble on down for the number 98 driver. But as they take a tumble, meanwhile, Richard White doesn't quite take a fall, but he definitely knows that third place the Evo class is where he's been relegated to, and therefore he'll be hoping that the leaders of the Evo class perhaps fight and bring him back into it. If not, 7 seconds back is Edward Berry, and we see the championship leader here in a fourth place position for the Evo class, and well, if it's going to be a full place today, that championship lead is going to be slashed once again. He may even lose the lead of the championship after today, depending on how the drop scores and the points are rearranged. But right now for Edward Berry, he is going to need a little bit more as the season goes on if he wants to try and take that Evo crown. Of course, everyone's going to be saying that Thomas Weston, with his pace, could be definitely now starting to make himself the proverbial favourite for it once he gets into the championship lead, but you never know. And that's the thing about these Evo drivers as well. I've been there myself in season 14 as a bronze class driver, the lowest class. The fact that when you are an Evo class, you are the lowest class on this grid, or the bronze as it used to be known back then, it inspires you to push harder and you look to naturally find the race pace. You'll speak to the drivers of the higher classes and ask them, how do you go a little bit faster here? How can you better drive this car, etc. So these Evo drivers, they can suddenly spring up a lot on pace as the season goes on, and that's what makes the Evo class such an intriguing one, because you really do have rookies and drivers who are less experienced, but they can pick up a lot of experience in a short time. But as they head upwards in towards what will be turn number 3, well, these drivers head on through, and Stephen Donnelly still battling side by side with Darren Giacovelli here, but that battling with Donnelly cleared Preston in towards turn number 1, and then Giacovelli into turn number 3 has actually forced Darren Giacovelli and Preston back onto each other. As we look back from the rear of the privateer, camera almost taken off the car there by the JST Motorsports Porsche. Here comes Preston up the inside, then on the brakes they go, and as they do, Joseph Preston makes the move count, but that's a run wide from Stephen Donnelly. So Donnelly there goes to trim the grass, and as he does, Austin Graff tries to squeeze him through here. He does, just about of Axis Sim Sport, and well, the Premier driver wants to get ahead of Donnelly and make sure James Conley can't find his way through, but Conley looks to the inside there. He's going to try and squeeze it into position, as meanwhile that is going to be Darren Giacomelli diving up the inside of Joseph Preston. Well, Preston gives him the space to cooperate there, otherwise they would have both been off the road. It's absolutely gloves off here in the fight for 5th and Evo. And Giacomelli on the inside there to Tower Ben, but Preston's on the outside. He's got the better brakes. He's got the better line. He'll take it back. Here comes Austin Graff around the outside, and Graff says, okay, guys, I'm coming through, stop playing around. And meanwhile, poor James Connolly, he's fallen to the back of this, and right now's looking at this and thinking, well, what can I do? As they make the way onwards, Sight Anti's also in the mix there in the red McLaren, and well, Sight Anti's had a difficult stage of the race earlier on, as we say hello to him in the YouTube chat. He finds himself right now a lap down and in the midst of what is essentially a free-class battle here, and we'll just try to negotiate it as smartly as possible. But, well, using intelligence here, he's definitely got an abundance of Sight Anthony, and well, he's been able to steer clear of the danger, but also enjoyed himself. But meanwhile, a bit further down the road, Christian Furs battling with Daryl Giacomelli there, moves up into 31st place overall, and these drivers right now and definitely seemingly enjoying all the scrapping out there as we... Oh, goodness me, that's Darren Giacomelli we come back to. He's into the wall at Sunset Bend, so it's gone wrong there. And, well, as he brings it back up to speed, there's damage on the front of the car. That's not coming to the pits, however, so I think he's got away with whatever the shunt has been. But we need a replay of that as quickly as we can. In fact, we get one immediately to explain what exactly happened to Darren Giacomelli. And here we go. So this was heading down towards turn number 17. Sight Anthony looking to the inside here. And as they did, oh, goodness me. Well, Giacomelli then carried all the speed. Stephen Donnelly was there to help break his descent into the wall. But it wasn't enough there. Can we get the onboard with Sight Anthony to potentially see whether there was instigated contact? And I think we might be able to. We jump on board. Let's listen in. And a tiny tap there, if that. Now, Sight Anthony, I think, wanted to hold that inside line to potentially just try and A, give himself a clear run of the corner, and also B, give Darren all the width of the corner. But then Darren's come across there as Sight tries to position himself that way, and as a result, it's led to that contact and subsequently that domino effect contact to Stephen Donnelly. So a bit of a difficult one there to unpick. Not really sure who's to blame on that one. I think everyone wanted to take that corner the best ball they could, but in the end, it went a bit wrong. Let's come back to your live racing. So as we do, and jumping from the onboard of Darren Giacomelli's car to the exterior, and right now you can definitely see the damage on the car there, no doubt about it, as he gradually makes his way around. But as he does so, that is going to be a bit of frustration for Joseph Preston, where it's a place gained, and well, he'll feel as though he's safe from it now. But as we do look from them, back to Sean Connor. Well, Sean Connor's not going to get a break here, and I've got to feel for him right now, because if he looks in his rearview mirrors, he's once again going to see the man he spent the best part of 20 minutes of the opening stint fighting. It's the pro leader of Christian Maltrek, and Mikey Storey, meanwhile, for Dexterous Motorsports, is closing up very quickly behind the pair. And well, Maltrek in particular is not going to be too happy with the fact that this is happening, because the problem is, Storey right now, well, he wants that lead of the class back, and he's bringing Casper Brotner and, most importantly, Darren Sharples behind him. Of course, Brotner and Sharples, both part of the old Dooting Cars establishment, so therefore the two teammates, they'll work together. And if you're Brotner and Sharples at this point, they're going to be on the radio to themselves and the team principal discussing what happens here, because for Brotner, he wants to make his way past these pros and get ahead of Sean Connor to get the points. For Sharples, there is a win in the pro class available here. So who gets the president? Is it the elite driver of Brotner, or is it the pro driver Sharples? That's one for the team to unpick. It's going to be a bit of an interesting one between them. And as they all head onwards, we also do have the Evo lead under pressure here, because Simon Hartley has Thomas Weston right behind him. In the final quarter of this race, Weston has found his way past Nathan Addison quite recently. And here they come then up towards Bishop Bend. But it's not going to be like chess here, where it'll be Bishop takes Rook. It's going to be Weston takes Hartley potentially come the end of this lap, if Weston gets a good run out of Le Mans and he can make it count in towards Sunset. But Simon Hartley's not just going to roll out the way and let it go, as we jump on board here with Thomas Weston. Now, good exit for the pair coming out of the corner, but Weston has the slipstream. That will give him the slight tactical advantage here as he builds up the speed, heading towards top gear very shortly as he hits the limiter. He does so. Twin turbo V8 here for the McLaren 720S Evo, roaring at the maximum. West up the inside. Does he get it stopped in time? He does the apex there. Very brave on the brakes there for Thomas Weston. That's confidence. But Hartley on the outside. Oh, goodness me. And Hartley in it almost loses it as Nathan Addison takes evasive action. And for Simon Hartley, he just had a bit too much steering lock as he got the power down. Thomas Weston does find his way through, but it could have been far more dramatic if Hartley had not been able to get it under control by the time he tapped Weston on the side. But that goes to show the limits with which Simon Hartley was driving at, as Thomas Weston does now take the Evo lead. but can Simon Hartley respond? Richard White is closing as well, and I think for Simon Hartley right now, he's going to need at least a lap to reset there, because that was absolutely crazy in terms of that sideways motion. But we will see, because goodness me, that is not the way you want it to go. As meanwhile, Thomas Weston, he's back in on the throttle there. I think that might be for a slowdown as Weston tucks back in behind, so Simon Hartley gets another chance here. Weston picks up a slowdown, and as they make the way out to turn number 7, it's a reset. But Richard White now is only 1.3 seconds behind and heading up towards what will be turn number 10. It all starts over, but Hartley now has something in mind. Can he back Weston off enough to make Richard White become a third player in this one? And the fact they've got Edward Berry only 4.5 seconds behind, the Evo leaders are starting to condense together. In the Premier League, meanwhile, we do have Hendrik Zilka under pressure of Robin Pownell. We haven't forgotten about that. We are keeping an eye on it. And also Christian Baltret and Mikey Storey in the Pro League are close together. And Richard Simnor and Joe Nathan in the Elite class. Well, it is almost 1.8 seconds between the two of them right now. But we have got lead battles across all four classes here, all playing out in quick succession. And we'll keep you apprised as to how they develop, ladies and gents, because here we go again then. Hartley versus Weston, part 2. It's back onto the Auburn straight they go. And Hartley had a good exit out the corner last time, he does so again. But Weston, well, he has just as good an exit, but he has a bit more confidence on the brakes. But up towards turn number 17 they come. And, well, will Weston go for it on the inside for a second time? Yes, he will. Looks like the inside here into the braking zone. Hartley gives it a lot more space, but goes way too wide there. Takes all the marbles with him, but he does get a switch back here using all the width of the corner, so he will get the power down. But Hartley's now got the difficult thing to do. He's got to find a way into the lead through Genderbean corner, and Weston is never going to give up this opportunity. He'll defend it in the middle of the road. He'll hold the inside line, and for Thomas Weston, that may be the lead of the Evo class. He may have got it just in time, as Hartley's still there. Hartley's going to have one last shot of this in towards turn number 3 before it's going to be one line formation, and Thomas Weston in the end outbreaks in turn 3, and he'll take that lead at least for now. But Simon Hartley is there, and he's going to try and stay with him all the way through to the very end. Meanwhile, we look then back up to the Pro Class League battle. It's Christian Baltrek, Mikey Storey, and Darren Sharples. Sharples and Brotner, they've made the call. Old dudes in cars, they've swapped the cars around to give Sharples the opportunity here. They know that Brotner, whilst he could take on Sean Connor, there's something much bigger at stake here for the team in terms of points and the Drivers' Championship. And that's the right call, in my opinion, because of the fact, remember, the Team's Championship is the top 2 drivers each round of the team who take their class points and add them to the team's total. So if Sharples can take the winning class, they'll be taking a lot more. They'll be taking 100 points versus what arguably would be perhaps a 5th place in the elite class for Brotner, and that would be worth the best part, if my memory serves me correctly, of 60 points. So it would be a 40-point deficit they create for themselves by prioritising what would be Brotner over Sharples. But of course, Sharples has got to get close enough now as they head up towards turn number 17. And right now, well, Maltrek has got this under control. It's the battle of the BMWs and the Germans. Well, the battle of the BMWs and the Mercedes. It's an all-German mark podium here that's emerging for the Pro Class. But which order is it going to be in? Will it be the wonderful Bayerische Motorwerken, or will it be the AMG Ring that stands at the very top? Well, we've only got 9 minutes and a lap to tell. In the Premier Class, meanwhile, Hendrik Zilka and Robin Pownell, they have run away with the lead. Head of Samuel Clark and Joe Sparrow, who you'll see in the rear of the picture very shortly, potentially, are fighting for that 3rd place, conversely. Here they are, as they make the way through, and Sparrow right now and Clark, they both seem to be equal pace. Well, they don't seem to have the pace they had earlier on in the race to keep up with Zilka and Pownell. I wonder if that's potentially down to a tyre swap in the pit lane, and whether perhaps they decide to stay on their starting tyres all round the car, whereas perhaps Zilka and Pownell decide to swap some tyres, or vice versa. It'd be very interesting to know exactly what they changed in the pit lane beyond putting fuel in the car. But Clark here goes defensive briefly. Sparrow follows him there, and Joe Sparrow right now saying to him, I'm literally following you because I want that toe. I haven't got the speed in this Aston Martin to out-drag you to a corner, but every little sniff and slipstream, I'm going to take it, as he puts his lights on full flash as well there. And well, right now, Samuel Clark will not be looking at his rear view mirror anymore, because I think in the end he'll be blinded by the flashing lights there. And it's not just the sun in Florida. But looking around the outside, he goes! That's going to be very late on the brakes there. He's still there as they make the way towards turn 11. That's bold. It's brave from Sparrow, but it doesn't work out. But that shows you how committed he is to try and make this move. That's not normally how you go for it into Cunningham Bend. But Joe Sparrow rips up the rule book of overtaking here at Sebring and says, you know what? I can do it in places that but they can't. Well, as they head onwards, will be, well, hold up the phone. We've had trouble for Thomas Weston, our Evo leaders, into the pit lane. And well, I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to have to cut to a quick replay, because that means Simon Hartley is now back into the lead of that class ahead of Richard White. And here is a quick replay to explain how Thomas Weston has ended up in arrears. So this was only moments after they changed the place of the lead of the class into Cunningham Bend. Weston made his way out the corner, rear of the car, lifted up and let go, and went, oh my goodness, straight into the barrier. It's a nasty shunt, front left suspension's collapsed, and Weston's race is over for the win of the class. A small mistake with big consequences, and for Thomas Weston, that is going to be painful to deal with going forward. But back to your live racing. So we come on back and in good time as well, because Sparrow and Clark are still close together here. It's not over yet. And indeed, right now, these laps are running down. Tyre life is becoming marginal. Fuel tanks are becoming limited. And is anybody going to splutter across the line? Is anybody going to have to make a last gasp dash to the pit lane? As Thomas Weston has just left the pit lane with a fast repair. And as they head on through, Robin Powdier tells us in the YouTube chat that he only put fuel in the car, and that might be the secret. Perhaps staying on the same set of starting tyres was the way to go. But as they head onwards right now, these drive so close together, and here comes Sparrow. He looks one way to the other. Clark puts it in the middle of the road, but Sparrow backs off there, knowing the hairpin on such a tight line. It's possible, but it's almost impossible to make it happen. And once he comes out there, he just waits for the moment. Meanwhile, back to the Pro League battle. Maltrek still caught behind elite 5th place runner Sean Connor here. And Maltrek right now will be absolutely muttering under his helmet words that we can't repeat on this broadcast, I imagine. He'll just want Sean Connor to go away. He'll want Connor to find a couple attempts to pace and just disappear. Not because he doesn't like fighting with him, but right now this is the worst time to have a driver of another class in front of you for overall track position, because yes, he's gained on the straights, but what you can see in the corners is Maltrek's got so much speed in this BMW through the corners. Connor meanwhile has a bit more speed on the straights, the way they've set up that McLaren by looks of things, and therefore Maltrek right now, well, he's having to use Connor's slipstream to keep himself alive as Connor there sees them all weave back and forth, and I'm giggling to myself because right now that shows you how desperate Maltrek is to hold on to this lead. He'll take every little mile an hour he can through these corners as Storey and Sharpwood continue to queue up behind him, and Brotler is right there with him as they roar the way out. And right now for Christian Maltrek, if he brings this home, this is going to be an incredible result for the Miracle MA70 Esports driver. And I think for Mikey Storey and Darren Sharples, they're both going to be tipping their hats to him on the podium. But there's Maltrek. He looks up the inside of Connor and says, Connor, please just move out the way. And Sean Connor says, I can't do that. I need to fight. And as they make the way towards turn number 3, it's an absolutely brilliant back and forth between these drivers. And right now, well, great respect being shown here for Sean Connor. You would imagine that when he gets out the car today, he won't be patting the elite drivers in front of him on the back, although I think he'll politely say well done to the podium of Simnor, Nathan and Davies should it finish that way. But he will be given a huge pat on the back and high fives to Maltrek, Storey and Sharples here. As meanwhile, Maltrek looks out on the outside. He goes all in for it. Has Maltrek called it too soon? Yes, he has. Storey's up the inside. Here we go. And as they made the way out turn number 7, Storey right now has to back off there. He would have been run out of road legally there by Maltrek, who had the right to line. But Storey right now bears his fangs there and says, right, it's time to go feral. Sharples looks up the inside. Storey covers him off there, but also looks up the inside of Maltrek. And it is going to be offensive defensive between the 3 drivers now as they all make the way into the final couple of laps here. We've got 4 minutes left, and what that means is as our race leader Richard Simnor gets ready to complete another lap, we are going to see a 29th and a 30th lap here. We're going to go the distance, and Maltrek meanwhile right now, can he go longer? We'll have to see whether he can hold on a little bit longer. Hendrik Zilka, meanwhile, still leading Premier Class. Powdy is there with him. Meanwhile, we've had an incident for Joe Sparrow that's seen him drop away from Samuel Clark for 3rd place in the Premier Class. We may get a replay of that shortly. We'll see what we can do. But as they continue to scrabble right now, it is absolutely on a knife edge here for the lead of 2 of our classes. In the Evo class, Simon Hartley is being caught up by Richard White. White has found a little bit of pace over the last couple of laps and got the gap down to sub 1 second. So therefore, he may have a gasp at this on the final lap. We will see. They've got 2 more laps to go here. Indeed, most of the field has our leaders gone on to the penultimate lap. And as they do, well, right now, one mistake could define it all. As we come back to the fight for 5th overall, Maltrek, Storey and Sharples chasing Connor. But it has the bigger connotations of the pro win here today. And right now, Darren Sharples, oh, goodness me, Sharples is being an absolute menace there to Mikey Storey. Looking up the inside, sighting his braking zones, but also saying to Storey, I'm right here if you make a mistake. If you give give me one chance, Mikey, I am taking this place off of you. So right now, Sharple's been the most obstinate forward in the backside of Storey as they come out of turn number 5. Casper Brotner is playing rear guard action with Hendrik Zilka gradually closing up behind them. Joe Sparrow, meanwhile, as I look out my content booth windows, had to come into the pit lane. Whether that's a repair work or for a drive-through, I'm not 100% certain. But what I am certain of here right now is that we're watching a thrilling battle. And Sharples goes all in on braking. Just squeezes the inside there. I think that might have been a missed braking marker there from Sharples. Casper Brotner tucks him behind and reminds him, look, I'm here behind you, but don't throw it all away. And Storey in the end has to give him the space to cooperate as they come down. Connor goes defensive once more in towards turn number 10. And as they're coming out the corner right now, for sure, Connor, what tyre life has he got left in that McLaren? If any on those rear wheels, they must be absolutely shredded. And Christian Maltrek here is all over the back of him like a bad rash. I don't think he could get any closer. He's just looking one way then the other. Oh, onto the gravel goes Sean Connor. That's a run wider. The first mistake we've seen from him all day today. And that goes to show you right now, tyre life is at a premium in all these cars. None more so in the number 10 McLaren. And Maltrek looking one way then the other, but can't find a way through. Zilka versus Poundier. They are only 2.5 seconds off the back of the Pro League battle. There it goes to the bottom of your picture. That shows you how much time they are bleeding out of this race. And Simon Hartley and Richard White are getting closer together here. And right now, White is only 4 tenths off the back of Hartley. This could be White's to win, yet he may find a way through here. But as they get ready to go to one final lap, there is Sean Connor going defensive. Maltrek around the outside. A bit of contact between the two of them. Here comes Storey up the inside, and Storey's going to move to lead of the Pro class. But Maltrek tucks back in behind. Sharples now gets right at the back. The white flag waves. Our leader's already up to turn number 7, but we stay transfixed this fight for as long as we can. And Storey now leads the Pro class. He's back where he started. But here comes Maltrek looking up the inside. Sharples as well. They all look to the inside, but nobody could beat Mikey Storey to the apex. Now towards turn number 3, and with Sean Connor still holding on right now, can Mikey Storey balance the books? Can he find a way not to get caught up like Maltrek had time and time again? Well, it didn't work out for Christian Maltrek, but Mikey Storey seems to be finding the right balance here. Sharples has got teammate Brotner just lingering behind. Hendrik Zilka and Robin Pownley, they're only half a second off each other here. They continue to fight, and Simon Hartley leads onto the final lap in the Evo class, but Richard White looks one way, then he looks the other, but can't find a way to get involved at the moment. They're still waiting to each other. Edward Berry, he's closed up as well. Berry's back on a mission here as he roars his way around 2 seconds. He is closing at 1.5 seconds a lap. He may just be there right at the very end. We will see as from them, we look back up to the very front. Richard Simnor right now is still in control ahead of Joe Nathan. And that is a 3.5 second gap, nothing between them, as they roll the way through one mistake, and it could all go the other way. But from then we come back to Storey, Maltrek and Sharples for a brief moment. We'll stay with them until our leader heads towards sunset, ladies and gentlemen. But Storey right now coming out of the corner, out of tower. He gets caught up behind what is their Sean Connor. We'll have to come back to that in a moment, because making his way out the final corner from Richard Simnor. It's been an absolutely pitch-perfect race today, and Simnor makes it back-to-back wins here at Sebring ahead of Joe Nathan, elite and overall, with DCW Racing just outpacing Rage Against the Game Esports. Ryan Davis will then finish in what will be 3rd place here as he beats Raz Harper in the game of strategy today, and the Empire Motorsport driver returns to the podium. Raz Harper, meanwhile, will take a solid finish in class in what will be 4th place here for DDK Racing Team on his return to the grid. But behind him, well, we will see. For Mikey Storey, he found his way past Sean Connor. He's done it, and for Mikey Storey, it's a win in the Pro class in an incredible showdown of wits, skill and determination here at Sebring. Storey takes it in the Pro class ahead of Christian Maltrek, and then it will be Sean Connor, Casper Brotner and Darren Sharples, with Sean Connor, I believe, potentially picking up a black flag right at the end. Hendrik Zilka will take the win in the Premier class just ahead of Robin Powndier by 2.5 tenths, and Samuel Clark will take 3rd in Premier ahead of Nathan Anstis, who will come home in 13th place as they make the way on around. But as they do, well, these drivers right now, it's been an absolutely incredible race, and Simon Hartley will just hold on here for the Evo win, his first of the season for Dartwing Racing with Sim Coach setups ahead of Richard White, who was right there at the end, and Yavi Sierra just split them from Edward Berry, who rounds off the Evo podium. Goodness me, folks, what an incredible conclusion, as we'll then see Shane Connor in his debut take 4th place in Premier in a solid drive for Connor Bros ahead of Rob Windsor. And Joe Sparrow in the end, with a late bit of drama, having to settle for 6th in Premier Class. He's just not having a happy season so far as the GT3 Motorsports driver, but he's getting there. Stephen Dolly will take 21st, and then we will have Ashley Coupland ahead of Austin Graf, with James Connolly and Joseph Preston round off your top 25 finishers, all on the lead lap. And Joseph Preston being 25th on the road, but 4th place in the Evo class. Not a podium today, but another solid effort there for the GT Motorsports driver. But as Richard Simnor cools the car down very gradually, and well, I think him and Joe Nathan exchanged thumbs up to each other in what was really a race about 3 seconds in the end, and that's how Richard Simnor controlled it. Joe Nathan kept him honest every step of the way. But right now, whereas Joe Nathan controlled the opening 3 rounds of the season, the last 3 rounds of the championship have definitely been in the hands of Richard Simnor, little by little, ever more. And right now, the DCW Racing driver seems to be just one step ahead. But as our drivers cool things down, let's cool things down as well here at the Contour booth and take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, with those results. Started off, of course, with the overall finishing positions. So after a phenomenal 60 minutes of racing here in round number 6 of season 16 of the UK SimRacing GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing and hosted by SimRacing International, Richard Simnor, your overall winner for DCW Racing, and with it the elite winner by 3.1 seconds against Rage Against the Game Esports is Joe Nathan. Ryan Davis took 3rd place there for Empire Motorsport in a long-term fight versus DDK Racing Team's Raz Harper, but the undercut didn't work out for Harper today, and Ryan Davis, by going long, guaranteed himself the 3rd place spot. Mikey Storey finished 5th overall, but more importantly, the pro victory there for Dexterous Motorsports, head of Miraca M870 Esports' Christian Maltrek, who led for so long, but in the end was stuck behind Sean Connor to his detriment and picked the wrong time to strike, and Mikey Storey just about picked it absolutely spot on. The Connor Bros drivers, meanwhile, he served an absolutely brilliant race, finishing 7th in the end, with the McLaren driver fighting hard all the way through and definitely making a brilliant debut there, fair but firm, I'd like to say, ahead of Casper Brockner, his fellow elite class driver who took 8th for Old Dudes in Cars. It was Old Dudes in Cars Blues there, Darren Sharples, who in the end took 9th place, 3rd of the pro drivers, and Sharples and Brockner swapping the places back in the end right at the finish because of the fact that Brockner had given him the place to try and take the pro win, but in the end he decided to give it back in order to give him a chance to chase down Sean Connor. Hendrik Zilka, with a brilliant undercut strategy, won in the Premier class for a top 10 overall, 10th place there for the Old Dudes in Cars blue driver, and Robin Powney was right behind him at the finish line, the runner-up in Premier, and 11th best the rest overall. From the sim coach driver, it was Dexterous Motorsports Samuel Clark who rounded off the Premier top 3, and then Nathan Anstis was 13th there for UKSimRacing Mansell, ahead of the Evo winner there, Simon Hartley, for DWR with sim coach setups, who takes his first win. I don't think he's going to quite believe the fact that he's been able to pull it off with an incredible amount of consistency, and in the end, Thomas Weston goaded himself into a mistake and cost himself that victory right when it was very much in front of him. And in fact, I need to correct myself, ladies and gentlemen, because I've just double-checked the statistics, and that is a 2nd win of the season for Simon Hartley. I do apologise there. Added to his win for the season opener, it is Jordan Jones who's yet to take a win out of the DWR with SimCoach setups and get the 2 teammates confused there, and I do apologise. But Simon Hartley taking that 2nd win in class just ahead of Richard White, who takes a season best performance there for UKSimRacing Mansell and came on so strong at the end. And in another story, if there was one more lap, he would have potentially taken the Evo win. Yavis Sierra was 16th, and there was Edward Berry who completed your Evo podium with 3rd place there in the class and 17th overall for UKSimRacing Hill. So it means we covered all the podium finishers in the different classes overall, and what we'll do now is we'll quickly round out the overall finishing positions before coming on to the classes, which is where the points are made. And it was Shane Connor, Rob Winter and Joe Sparrow who rounded off your top 20, and the lead lap was concluded by your 25th place finisher of Joseph Preston for JST Motorsports in the Evo class. It was a lap down to Joel Loudon on his debut in the Ford Mustang, having run the Aston Martin so far this season, but a change of car has not changed up his luck. If anything, it's gone a little bit backwards. He was ahead of Christer Halsoy, with Luke Sherlock, Darren Giacovelli and Christian Furs completing your top 30, and there was also a lap down there for Alan Lever and Thomas Weston, with 2 laps down to Darryl Giacovelli, 3 down to Cy Anthony, and an unfortunate early retirements in the race for us. Alex Brown, Peter Cox, Richard Jones, Jack Barker, Carl Tivley and Daniel Pays were slow and steady racing in particular today, having a very unfortunate day at the office with 2 of their 3 drivers, with fact all 3 of their drivers having premature retirements. But with that, let's come on to your class finishing positions, starting with Elite, first and foremost. And as we can see, Richard Simnor, your winner in the end for DCW Racing by 3.1 seconds, head of Rage Against the Game Esports is Joe Nathan, but it was the slenderest of margins today, and Simnor put the car on pole, and that was the difference as they chased each other out, but in a game of cat and mouse, it was the mouse day that ran away, and Richard Simnor there coming away with the 100 points or the big cheese. Ryan Davies took third place in the end for Empire Motorsport in his back and forth fight with Raz Harper. Great to see the two going toe-to-toe, with the DDK Racing team driver in the end taking fourth, and then Sean Connor on his debut for Connor Bros. We didn't get to really fight the rest of the elite class, but he definitely got to fight a lot of pro drivers, but he finished fifth there ahead of Casper Brotner, who was hot on his heels right at the end, but the old dudes in cars driver could not find a way to make his way into fifth place. Yavi Sierra took seventh, having started from towards the very back of the field, but gradually made his way upwards, and Ashley Cooter in the end with a lot of misfortune at the start of the race, where he took eighth for relentless racing. In the pro class, we saw in the second of our classes an incredible story that in the end saw its concluding chapter written by the victor as his history, and Dexterous Motorsports' Mikey Storey was that victor there, winning by 6/10 over America MA70 Esports' Christian Maltrek. Old Dudes in Cars Blues, Darren Sharples was third there, and in the end was right in the hunt all the way to him, but couldn't find a way to muscle his way past the top two. Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Mansell, well, he was a sizable 29 seconds behind, but he really was the best of the rest today, in fourth place ahead of Stephen Donnelly, the JSD Motorsports driver being the last pro driver to finish on the lead lap in the Haribo Ford Mustang. Christer Halsoy with the misfortune right at the start of the race in his contact with Christian Furs. Well, the two of them finished together 6th and 7th for Track 6 Racing and Padaspec Motorsports respectively, and it was 3 laps down to UKSimRacing Price's Sight Anthony, who had a bit of misfortune early on, and unfortunately that misfortune seemed to plague him throughout the race. We did see retirements for Slow and Steady Racing's Peter Cox, and also made for races Jack Barker, and then coming on to the Premier class, it was the story of none other than Hendrik Zilker in the end, who with a brilliant bit of undercut strategy, when he was running as part of the top four, we went all the way from the back of it, all the way to the front of it for Old Dudes in Cars Blue. Robin Powdier followed him through in the end, and the sim coach driver knew what the strategy was, but unfortunately when he got behind the Swiss, he couldn't find a way through, so therefore the Swede had to settle for second. But the Corvette coming on strong again for sim coach, ahead of Dexterous Motorsports' Samuel Clark, who on the second stint didn't quite have the pace of the first stint, and found himself battling versus Joe Sparrow, but in the end made it onto the final step of the podium. Connor Bros' Shane Connor, we had a relatively quiet race in the mid-portion, but he took a fourth place there on his debut. Well done to him. 1.2 seconds ahead of Rob Windsor at the end for UKSimRacing Hill, and it was Joe Sparrow in 6th place there, with a late mistake and a trip to the pits, seeing him relegated down the order for JSD Motorsports. Austin Graff, he enjoyed a good little battle with James Colley, who took 7th for Axis Simsports ahead of the UKSimRacing Hill driver. And there was a lap down for Luke Sherlock, the privateer, although he made it past the open lap today, but not the first 3 laps, unfortunately. Someday this season, we will see him make the entire race without incident, and I'm sure when he does, he'll be fighting for a top 5. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen. And Alan Lever there as well, a lap down for UKSimRacing Mansell with misfortune, blighting what has been a brilliant run of form over the last couple of rounds. Retirements for Richard Jones and Daniel Pays then give way to your Evo class. Here we see in Evo, victory for Simon Hartley and his second win of the season for DWR with SimCoach setups, and a big smile will be on his face, no doubt about that, ahead of Richard White for UKSimRacing Mansell. It was 3 attempts at the finish, and White came on strong, but it wasn't enough, nor was it enough for Edward Berry, who found his pace all the way at the end of the race. But the UKSimRacing Hill driver will know that third place today. He'll want it to become a second, if not a win, next time out to keep his championship momentum alive. Joseph Preston took 4th there for JSD Motorsports, another solid finish, and it was a lap down for Joel Loudon for SRI with same privateer Ryan, as it was for Darren Giacovelli. Thomas Weston, who after that spin for the lead of the race, in the end had to settle for 7th, a very frustrated end to his race. Darren Giacovelli was 2 laps down in 8th. Then we did see slow and steady races Alex Brown and the privateer of Carl Tivoli both retire from the race prematurely, and commiserations to them. So that's a rundown on your provisional results, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, stewards' inquiries pending. But with that, as the circuit falls silent here at Sebring, there's only one thing we can do, and that is begin to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now eager to be on the grid, given the intensity of the racing, or just wanting to know more about the SimRacing International community, for all that and plenty more, we do recommend that you do head to our official Discord. Invite link at the bottom of your screen. As you can see there, it's the beating heart of the community, and you will not find a more friendly community that is operated out of the United Kingdom, but spans the globe, all the way from Europe through to the Americas, all the way through to Asia and the Pacific region. And if you are looking to get on the grid, of course, you've been tuning in today to the Sunday GT3 UKSimRacing Community Series that runs every Sunday evening. But if you're a GT3 fan, but you're more of a weekday racer, we of course do have our Premier Trophy.ai sponsored GT3 Championship in its 10th instalment that runs on Thursday evenings. We also do have on alternating Sundays the America's GT Challenge Championship, which sees GT3s and GTEs, the cars they replaced, share the same grid in a multi-class series that you'd think that's not a recipe for success, but quite the opposite. It has been an incredible season so far. And if you're looking for something a bit more casual, you're looking to practice or just familiarise yourself, perhaps you're a rookie to the grid, well, you can always join our free-to-join practice league that runs on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. So there's never been a better time to be on the grid at SimRacing International, and to be on the grid, just join our official Discord. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our league and series sponsors, who do include, of course, Trophy.ai, Kame, More Than Technology, SimCoach, where you unlock your true potential as a sim racing driver, the GP2 Group, and also, we'd like to also lastly say a big thank you to Motorsport UK's esports division for their continued recognition of us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community, and we look forward to continue our extended relationship with Motorsport UK as we make our way closer and closer towards 2026. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we inch just a little bit closer towards the season finale, and next time out, it'll be round number 7, where we make our way to South America, particularly to Brazil, for the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, but you all know and love it and refer to it as Interlagos, and it is between two lakes in Sao Paulo City that we will see the championship fights intensify. In the elite class, well, it's your two regular suspects of Richard Simnor and Joe Nathan, but Simnor has taken control. Can Nathan find a way to get back? In the pro class, Mikey Storey is under major pressure, but he's withstood it so far. But Christian Halsoy definitely has his number, as does Darren Sharples. In the Premier class, with anybody's guess how it's going to play out, with so many drivers so close on the pace to championship leader Samuel Clark. And in the Evo class, Simon Hartley will take the lead as a result of his win today. However, he will know that he's got Richard White, Edward Berry and Thomas Weston all breathing down his neck, along with teammate Jordan Jones. How the story continues? Well, the only way to find out is to tune in a week's time, because the racing will occur on Sunday, the 9th of November 2025, but come join us as if it were live on Wednesday the 12th of November and see what exactly goes down in Brazil. But until then, we've been SimRacing International. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drives, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.